Look at you, still standing there, calm, silent, while they scramble for excuses that don't exist anymore. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't even flinch. You just said the thing everybody else was too scared to say out loud. And now, the entire room is acting like you dropped a grenade on their reputation. Ooh, the panic is delicious. They wanted you quiet, predictable, containable, but instead, you peeled the mask off the whole operation with one sentence, one clean shot of truth. And suddenly all their confidence leaked out onto the floor like spilled ink. Look at them now, hands shaking, eyes darting, pretending they're fine, pretending they're not bothered, pretending they didn't hear you the first time. But you know better, don't you? You saw that flicker, that little crack in their posture. That moment, their spine folded just a bit. The moment your words hit the part of them they can't protect. Surprise, they're not mad, they're terrified, because you didn't just call them out, you cornered them in their own story. And the best part, you're not backing down, not walking it back, not clarifying to save their comfort. No, you said what needed to be said, and now the fallout belongs to them. Let them cry, let them scramble, let them rewrite the narrative as many times as they want. You just turned the whole table with one truth they weren't prepared to face. You thought I wasn't watching, didn't you? That's the part that always fascinates me. How people assume your silence means blindness. How they mistake your calm for naivety. How they believe you only see what they perform and not the small trembling truth behind it. But you've been observing the whole time. You caught it long before they realized the stage lights were pointed straight at them. The micro-twitch in the jaw, the half-second delay before answering, the way their eyes darted, not to you, but to each other as if silently asking, did they notice? Did they catch that? You did. You always do. They rehearsed their lines, practiced their tone, engineered their confidence. But real reactions are born in places they can't control. And you watch those places crack open, one by one. It started small. A misplaced smile here, a forced laugh there, a strange shift in posture when your name drifted into the conversation. Nothing big enough to accuse, but everything precise enough to confirm. Most people ignore these details. Most people take the surface as truth. But you've never been most people, have you? You study silence. You measure hesitation. You calculate inconsistencies the way surgeons measure incisions. Clean, exact, unforgiving. And the more they tried to hide, the more obvious it became. Every time they tightened their mask, you saw it slip from the edges. Every time they played unbothered, you watched their pulse betray them. They thought they were fooling you. They thought their little inconsistencies were invisible. They thought you were too polite, too quiet, too neutral to notice anything at all. But that's the part that turned the game on its head. Because while they were busy pretending, you were busy collecting. Details, patterns, fault lines. And by the time they realized you'd mapped every crack they tried to hide, it was already far too late. You weren't confused, you weren't surprised, you weren't caught off guard. You were simply waiting for their mask to finish breaking. You didn't shout, you didn't slam anything, you didn't even lean forward. You just spoke. Calm, clear, exact, and that was enough. The moment the truth left your mouth, you could feel the air contract, not around you, round them. Watch it back in your mind. It happened fast, but not so fast. You missed it. The first reaction? The eyes, always the eyes. They widened, not in confusion, but in recognition, because deep down, they knew exactly what you were referring to. Then came the freeze, A pause so sharp it could have split the room in half. Their brains stalled like an overloaded circuit. Their rehearsed lines evaporated. Their confidence flickered out like a dying bulb. You didn't just speak the truth. You hit the part of them they work the hardest to protect. And the body can't hide that. Their shoulders sank a centimeter. Their chin lowered a fraction. Their hands tightened around whatever they were holding. Their breathing shifted, shallower, quicker, betraying the fear they thought they buried. You saw every detail. They tried to recover, of course. They always do. A forced laugh here, a sudden excuse there, a weird little, "Oh, well, what I meant was," stutter they tried to disguise with fake casualness, but you watched the facade buckle. The truth didn't just land, it detonated, not with noise, but with exposure. It stripped away their armor and left the raw, unprepared version of them trembling underneath. And the best part? They knew you saw it. That's what really cut them open. Not the truth itself, but the fact that you delivered it without hesitation, without fear, without blinking. Your words forced them into a corner they can't explain their way out of. Because once the truth is spoken, once it hits the bloodstream, once it activates every insecurity they thought they'd hidden, there is no going back. Their unraveling didn't start later. It started right there, in that exact second, when your quiet clarity burned straight through their carefully manufactured image. And you didn't flinch. You just watched the blast radius expand. The funny thing is, they really thought they could recover, as if a couple shaky sentences and a recycled explanation could somehow glue their collapsing image back together. You watched the whole system fail in real time. First came the overcompensation. They started talking too much, too fast, as if sheer volume might drown out the truth you'd already exposed. Every word they added only made the hole deeper. Then came the redirects. Sudden topic changes, random details, irrelevant stories, anything to pull attention away from the part of them that was leaking. The desperation was practically audible. They kept trying to reassert control, but control requires stability, and they had none left. Their script, oh, their precious little script, was malfunctioning. Lines they'd practiced in mirrors crumbled the moment pressure touched them. Their tone cracked. Their posture sagged. Their logic came apart like wet paper. It was beautiful, in a cold, clinical way. They tried humor. It failed. They tried defensiveness. That failed, too. They tried pretending they didn't care, but their trembling voice betrayed them before the sentence even ended. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was incremental, a slow, spiraling system failure, where every attempt to fix the damage created more damage. And you didn't interrupt, didn't rescue, didn't soften the blow. You just observed, quiet, steady, unshaken, while they scrambled to assemble an identity that could survive your clarity. But nothing they built held, because everything they were offering wasn't real. It was manufactured confidence, scripted authority, a persona designed to work only when unchallenged. The moment you introduced truth into the equation, the entire structure destabilized. Their words lost coherence. Their eyes lost direction. Their voice lost weight. They weren't responding to you. They were responding to the fear of being seen without armor. And that's when the shift began. Not in them, but in you. The moment you realized they weren't towering figures after all, just fragile construct, shelled together by rehearsed lines and borrowed strength. And now those lines were gone. Those constructs were collapsing, and you were still standing exactly where you started. Here's the part that stings them the most. They were being tested long before your truth ever entered the room. Not a written test, not a spoken one. A pressure test, the only exam that ever matters, and they didn't even know they were sitting for it. See, people reveal their real selves under strain. Not in the comfortable moments, not in the rehearsed moments, but in the split-second reactions they can't polish or censor. That's where character lives. That's where motives hide. That's where the truth leaks out. And you were studying that part the whole time. Every pause, every shift, every defensive twitch. You logged it. Not out of paranoia, but precision. You weren't judging their words. You were judging their instinct. And instinct doesn't lie. They thought you were just talking. They thought it was a normal conversation, a normal day, a normal interaction. But there was nothing normal about it. You were evaluating, measuring, testing, structural integrity. The way architects check foundations, looking for the hairline fractures that tell you everything you need to know. And under the slightest heat, their framework buckled. They exposed their priorities, their anxieties, their loyalties, their ego, not because you forced anything out, but because pressure strips away performance, their reaction to your truth. That was the exam. Every stuttered excuse, every scrambled redirect, every insecure overreaction was written in ink the moment they chose it. And the grade? Well, let's just say it wasn't flattering. They failed before they even realized the test had started. They failed because their stability was imaginary. They failed because their confidence depended on you staying silent. They failed because the moment you removed that silence, they vanished into panic. You didn't need to dominate them. You didn't need to outsmart them. You didn't need to outtalk them. You simply watched. You let their instinct speak louder than their script. And instinct always reveals the truth. By the time they noticed you were in control, the score was already written. The result was already sealed, and the exam they didn't know they were taking was already over. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when power changes hands. Not with shouting, not with conflict, not with some dramatic confrontation. No. It happens quietly, almost elegantly, a shift so subtle they don't notice it until the ground beneath them has already moved. And you felt it. Right after their voice cracked, right after their script collapsed. The room changed shape. They were no longer directing the narrative. They were reacting to you, responding to you, adjusting themselves around you the way unstable structures shift around a stronger foundation. Their fear became fuel, not for cruelty, but for clarity, because fear exposes hierarchy. When someone is truly confident, pressure activates strength. When someone is pretending, pressure activates panic, and their panic told you everything. They started watching your face before finishing their sentences. They started waiting for your reaction as if your approval was suddenly the hinge point of reality. They started choosing their words as though each one might trigger another truth they couldn't survive. That's when you knew they weren't leading the exchange anymore. They weren't steering the energy. They weren't the dominant presence they pretended to be. They were orbiting you. Every movement, every tone shift, every nervous swallow was calibrated around your stillness, your calm, your refusal to retreat. What they didn't understand is that clarity itself is power, and you had it. They didn't. You weren't trying to win anything. You were simply unmoved. And your lack of fear became the quiet force that inverted the entire dynamic. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It wasn't loud. It was inevitable. The moment they realized your silence wasn't submission, it was sovereignty. The whole narrative rewrote itself. They weren't the ones evaluating you. They weren't the ones controlling the outcome. They weren't the ones defining reality. You were. And that shift, that sudden irreversible inversion, is the part they never saw coming. And this is the part they never prepare for. The aftermath, the recoil, the slow, humiliating unraveling that begins the moment they realize the power has slipped out of their hands and landed, quietly, permanently, into yours. It doesn't happen instantly. Breakdowns rarely do. They happen in stages, each one more revealing and more pitiful than the last. First comes regret. Not real regret. Strategic regret. The kind where they replay every second in their head, wondering where they lost control, wondering how you saw through them, wondering why the truth hit so hard. Then comes backtracking, sudden clarifications, forced explanations, little rewrites of history meant to soften what they said earlier. I didn't mean it like that. What I was trying to say was, it came out wrong. No, it didn't come out wrong. It came out real. And that's what scares them. Next is panic diplomacy, the fake niceness, the sudden compliments, the weird shift into politeness so exaggerated it's almost theatrical. They start treating you like someone who holds the detonator, because in their mind, you do. Their voice gets softer, their smile gets tighter, their eyes get shinier, as if kindness might rewind the entire collapse. You dissect every move, effortlessly, because nothing reveals character faster than someone trying to escape. Accountability without admitting they're running. Then comes the worst stage for them, frantic rewriting. They try to reshape the narrative, edit the memory, twist the sequence. So the truth hurts less. They'll swear it wasn't that serious. They'll insist you misinterpreted. They'll claim things weren't how they looked, but every revision they attemptedly proves how deeply the moment wounded their ego. You can almost hear the internal machinery breaking, the gears grinding, the wiring overheating, the confidence malfunctioning beyond repair. And the whole time, you stay still, watching, analyzing, letting their unraveling play out like a slow-motion experiment. Because this is the part where they finally understand something they never wanted to admit. They broke themselves. You just refused to look away. And now we reach it. The part they prayed would never come. The moment where the scrambling stops, the excuses dry up, and there's nowhere left for them to hide because you didn't bend, you didn't flinch, you didn't smooth anything over to make them feel better about the mess they created. You stood firm. No backtracking. No softening. No, maybe I misunderstood. You held the truth exactly where you placed it, right in front of them, sharp enough to cut through every layer of their performance. And that's when the collapse turned final. They realized the thing they feared most. You weren't playing the game. You weren't negotiating reality. You weren't joining their little ritual of denial. You made them face it, face their contradictions, face their panic, face the version of themselves they tried to bury under charm and noise. And it hit them harder than anything you could have said, deliberately, not because you attacked, but because you didn't retreat. Your clarity became the mirror they couldn't escape. Every time they tried to rewrite the moment, your silence rejected the rewrite. Every time they tried to minimize what happened, your stillness amplified it. They weren't fighting you anymore. They were fighting the truth itself. And that is a battle no one wins. So the crying started. The shaky voices. The sudden emotional outbursts designed to flip the script and make you responsible for their undoing. But you didn't take the bait, not out of cruelty, out of certainty. You knew exactly what happened. They weren't breaking because of you. They were breaking because the truth finally caught them. You didn't twist anything. You didn't manipulate anything. You simply refused to cover the crack they created. And that final refusal, that calm immovability, became the moment everything turned, because while they scrambled, you stayed steady. While they collapsed, you stood clear. While they drowned in their own contradictions, you rose above the wreckage untouched. No backtracking, no guilt, no hesitation. You said what needed to be said, and the truth did the rest.